Rattata and Zigzagoon have both been given dark normal regional forms and even a new evolution in Zigzagoon's case. So let's make all the Route 1 rodents dark normal and give them evolutions. Hey everyone, Brandon here. So dark normal forms of the Route 1 rodents have become kind of a trend since Gen 7, and with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coming out this month, that trend could be broken. So I figured, why not posit what the rest of the rodents would look like as dark normal types and give them evolutions like Obstagoon. Just to clarify, I know the Route 1 rodents aren't all rodents like Bunnelby or Yungoos, but they all fill that role and that is their nickname in the community, so don't come at me with the, but there isn't a Route 1 rodent in each generation, because there is. Anyway, let's get started with Rattata and Raticate. Although they started the dark normal trend, they were not given a new evolution like the Zigzagoon line, so I wanted to go back and fix that. So when leveled up to level 35 while holding a King's Rock at night, Alolan Raticate becomes Ratten King, which I made with Fungu's Fakemon. Alolan Raticate's dex entry states that it forms groups of Rattata that it assumes command of, that each has their own territory, and that there are disputes over food. You know what that sounds like to me? A king and their kingdom, with the disputes over food mirroring the disputes over land. So the natural step up was to make the title official and give the Rat King his rat crown thanks to the King's Rock. Not only that, but this design is a reference to the ever disgusting Rat Kings, which is when a bunch of rats all get their tails intertwined or stuck together with some kind of substance. Ratten King has little Rattata tails in its kingly cloak that reference this. The darker background of the Rat Kings mixed so well with what was already there with the dark normal typing, dex entries, and general concept. Ratten King's name is a mixture of rat, rotten, king, and, excuse my pronunciation, Rattenkönig, which is the German name for Rat Kings. Ratten King are as rare as they are powerful. They band together groups of Raticate to form enormous kingdoms, which due to their hoarding nature is seriously harming the ecosystem of Alola. For the Route 1 rodents of Gen 2, we have Sentret and Furret. So let's see their dark forms that I made with Kai Fakemon SR. These two are based around the Nilgiri marten, which hails from southern India. As you can see, they now have little masks. This is because they are also based on sidekicks and anti-heroes. Characters that do heroic things, but don't play by the rules that heroes do, and will do almost anything to get the job done. Characters like Peacemaker, Deadpool, and Red Hood are great examples of this. The dark normal typing matches the idea of the normal hero with the darker method of saving people. Sentret act as a lookout and sidekick for Furret, while Furret is off saving fellow Pokemon, using sneaky and more conniving tactics that some may find unsavory. At level 35, Furret evolves into Sorit, a dark flying type. Sorit is based on the Indian giant squirrel and the Indian giant flying squirrel, having the enormous wings of the flying squirrel and the long tail of the giant squirrel. I always thought it was strange how Sentret went from a kind of flying squirrel or sugar glider to a ferret with absolutely no sign of flight capability, so I tried to merge both Sentret and Furret with this design, as well as incorporate the anti-hero theme, taking specific inspiration from Batman, who is more of a dark hero himself. Sorit glide above cityscapes, looking for potential threats to Pokemon. It can swiftly swoop into the rescue and just as swiftly take off, as if there were no trace of it being there at all. Next, we are skipping all the way to Gen 5 with these dark normal variants of Patrat and Watchog that are from the Mojave region by Tubbs AZ. Like many animals in real life, these two were forced to adapt their lifestyle because of urban expansion, becoming little thieves that steal food from the cities around them. They will dig vast tunnels underneath suburbs, coming up to swipe whatever food they can, with Watchog storing its haul in its bag-like tail, which it also uses to throw food back at pursuers if necessary. At level 35, while in an urban area, Watchog will evolve into Maraudog. Maraudog are criminal masterminds, orchestrating large-scale food heists with Patrat and Watchog. They are remarkable climbers and are able to fall great distances and land unharmed. Their designs evoke cartoonish depictions of criminals with the whole black and white striped clothing and black beanie look. Now, for Gen 6, we have these forms of Bunnelby and Diggersby I made with Tubbs AZ. They are dark normal and then dark ground type. Normally, Bunnelby and Diggersby are based around excavation and construction workers. So how exactly do you turn that dark? How about caves and mines? Those can be pretty dark. Specifically, gold and coal mines. Both kinds of mines have a dark and storied history, with coal mines in particular having a negative impact on the health of the coal miners, the surrounding environment, and climate change. So rather than the mud-caked appearance that Bunnelby and Diggersby usually have, these forms have a more soot-caked appearance like the coal miners do in those old-timey photos. Diggersby leans into the whole gold mining side of things with a gold tooth, big bushy beard, and freshly discovered gold nugget. The Bunnelby and Diggersby became this way because in whatever region they hailed from, they were used to excavate a new fuel source that was discovered a couple hundred years ago. They eventually adapted to living in the mines, though when the new fuel source was deemed too dangerous to continue using, they were abandoned by the miners who used them, as their fur coats still contained many of the harmful properties of the fuel source. Recently, a Pokemon ecology group has discovered a way to help these Pokemon rid themselves of their fur's dangerous properties, so they can be safely caught by trainers or kept as pets. At level 35, while in a cave, Diggersby evolves into Minersby. Its ears are now full-on excavation equipment. I took inspiration from the arms of Frankie from One Piece with this one, which I was very happy to do. Minersby is a gruff and tough old mining bunny who's been doing this since before you were born, sonny, so show some respect. The sort of overalls that Diggersby had have become big, floofy overalls. Its beard is bigger, which, as a beard lover myself, made me additionally happy. Its size, shape, and arm hair remind me of Roxanne's dad from the Goofy movie. The kind of girl next door's dad who you don't want to mess with. Minersby can tunnel at breakneck speeds and lift 100 times its own weight with its ears. Miners who would own a Minersby were usually those in charge, or those who worked extremely hard together with their Diggersby. Next up is Gen 7. For this, we have Yungoos and Gumshoos from Mycomon regions and made by Artist Astray. While Alolan Yungoos and Gumshoos are the enemy of Alolan Rattata and Raticate, Yungoos and Gumshoos actually operate in a similar way to their once enemies, with Yungoos becoming a little criminal, tricking trainers into stealing their personal items and food. Gumshoos, which is originally based on detectives, is now based on the opposite, crime bosses, leading gangs of Yungoos who steal valuables from neighboring towns. At level 35, while at night, and Gumshoos evolves into Alcapoos. These are the head honchos, the big kahunas, the boss, the kingpins, if you will. In fact, Alcapoos' design takes heavy inspiration from the Marvel villain Kingpin. Its name comes from the famous crime boss Al Capone, who was also a whiter man like Kingpin. Alcapoos, despite being very powerful and earning its position at the top of the evolutionary line, has its pre-evolutions handle the grunt work. It does not get along with other Alcapoos and will have mob-like wars fought for dominance. Moving on to Gen 8, we have these forms of Skwovet and Greedent that I made with Tubbs AZ. Galarian Skwovet and Greedent both love berries. Skwovet is always eating them, and Greedent stores them in their tails. So for these variants, we expanded upon that and the greed part of Greedent's name. They eat more berries than is required to sustain themselves and don't even bother to store the berries in their cheeks anymore. They just consume any berry in sight, which leaves no food for other Pokemon, forcing them to move elsewhere. This refers to Skwovet's original inspiration of the eastern gray squirrel, which is actually an invasive species in Europe and actually has displaced some of the native wildlife. The eastern gray squirrel is native to America though, so I thought it would be fun if this form was from an America-based region like Unova and was an invasive species there, kind of flipping the inspiration on its head. As I said, these variants expand upon the greed part of Greedent's name. Greed is one of the 7 deadly sins, so I shifted the inspiration over to another deadly sin, gluttony, which is essentially just greed over food. This all culminates when Greedent hits level 35 and evolves into Gluttongus. This thick squirrel is inspired by those caricatures of Roman emperors who have the grapes being fed to them. Just a big boy who likes to eat berries. And yes, the name comes from glutton and chungus, but also humongous. Like Snorlax, they very rarely move around, so they bully other Pokemon to bring berries to them. If they refuse, Gluttongus will force them to fight other Pokemon under its command. By now, you're probably asking yourself, or vigorously typing a comment, what about Bidoof? Well, you know I had to save the best for last. So here are the dark normal forms of Bidoof and Bibarel I made with Tubbs AZ. They are based on Japanese delinquents, also known as Yankee. The little floofs on their head have been turned into pompadours, and the mask-like parts of their faces have been turned into rad sunglasses. These Bidoof and Bibarel are known to be much rowdier than their Sinnohan counterparts. They will often get into fights with other Pokemon, and even trainers that insult their luxurious head fur. At level 35, while at night, Bibarel evolves into Babancho. I won't even lie, this is probably my favorite thing to come out of this video. Babancho's name comes from the word Bancho, which is the leader of a group of Yankee. A famous example of a Bancho is Jotaro Kujo from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's just so perfect! The name Babancho just came to me after seeing the sketch of this Pokemon, and I have been in love ever since. Babancho carries around a giant wooden bat that it carves itself because it's a beaver, and its tail pattern now looks like an angry face. Babancho are often having to come and clean up the messes of the Bidoof and Bibarel in their gangs. They can end any fight with a powerful strike from their bat or an equally powerful slap from their tail. And that's all of them. So thank you guys so much for watching. And with that, I will see you guys next time.